Welcome, everyone, to Working People, a podcast about the lives, jobs, dreams, and struggles of the working class today. Working People is a proud member of the Labor Radio Podcast Network and is brought to you in partnership with In These Times magazine and the Real News Network. This show is produced by Jules Taylor and made possible by the support of listeners like you. My name is Maximilian Alvarez, and today we are beginning a new investigation in our ongoing series where we speak with working class people living, working, and fighting for justice in America's sacrifice zones. As you know from listening to the voices and stories in this series, sacrifice zones are areas where people have been left to live in conditions that harm and even threaten life itself. And sacrifice zones, as ghoulish of a term as that is, they can look a lot of different ways. And the sources of toxic pollution or environmental devastation don't all look the same either. It can look like the mushroom cloud that exploded from the derailed Norfolk Southern bomb train in the sleepy Rust Belt town of East Palestine, Ohio. It can look like the black coal dust covering the windows and porches and the wheezing lungs of urban residents like here in South Baltimore. It can also sound different. And as we'll discuss in today's episode, sound itself and the entity producing it, intense, relentless, torturous noise, can be the main thing that's actually hurting people. And that's what Andrew R. Chow, a technology correspondent for Time magazine, found in the town of Granbury, Texas, about an hour southwest of Fort Worth. On an evening in December 2023, Chow writes, 43-year-old small business owner Sarah Rosenkrantz collapsed in her home in Granbury, Texas, and was rushed to the emergency room. Her heart pounded 200 beats per minute. Her blood pressure spiked into hypertensive crisis. Her skull throbbed. It felt like my head was in a pressure vise being crushed, she says. That pain was worse than childbirth. Rosenkranz's migraine lasted for 5 days. Doctors gave her several rounds of IV medication and painkiller shots, but nothing seemed to knock down the pain, she says. This was odd, especially because local doctors were similarly vexed when Indigo, Rosenkranz's 5-year-old daughter, was taken to urgent care earlier that year, screaming that she felt a, quote, red beam behind her eardrums. It didn't occur to Sarah that these symptoms could be linked. But in January of 2024, she walked into a town hall in Granbury and found a room full of people worn thin from strange, debilitating illnesses. None of them knew what exactly was causing their symptoms, but they all shared a singular grievance. A dull aural hum had crept into their lives, which growled or roared depending on the time of day, rattling their windows and rendering them unable to sleep. The hum, local law enforcement had learned, was emanating from a Bitcoin mining facility that had recently moved into the area and was exceeding legal noise ordinances on a daily basis. The development of large-scale Bitcoin mines and data centers is quite new, and most of them are housed in extremely remote places. There have been no major medical studies on the impacts of living near one, but there's an increasing body of scientific studies linking prolonged exposure to noise pollution with cardiovascular damage. And one local doctor, ears, nose, and throat specialist Salim Bahalu, says he sees patients with symptoms potentially stemming from the Bitcoin mine's noise on an almost weekly basis, end quote. So you guys should definitely read this excellent piece by Andrew Chow in Time, and you should watch the companion video report, both of which we've linked to in the show notes. And I want to thank Brother Andrew for helping me to connect with our guests today, who are all residents of Granbury themselves, and who have all been affected by the massive 300 megawatt Bitcoin mining operation near their homes. Now, the mine, which is owned by Marathon Digital, a Florida-based cryptocurrency company, uses a mix of liquid immersion and industrial fans to prevent the over 20,000 computers from overheating there. And many residents have said that it's the constant sound from those fans that has made life increasingly unbearable in their small town. In a statement to NBC News for a report that they did 6 months ago on the Bitcoin mine, Marathon said what companies frankly always say when I'm investigating stories like these, that they are doing nothing wrong, that they are the best of corporate neighbors, that they are abiding by existing laws, and that there's no proof they're the ones causing harm to the community. Quote, since Marathon took operational control of the data center in April 2024, the company said, we have gone above and beyond what is required in a well-established industrial zone to ensure our facility is best in industry, including engaging third-party experts to evaluate sound levels and investing millions of dollars to reduce the perceived loudness of the facility. As a result, all levels measured around the facility are well below state and county law sound limits. There is no established link, medical or otherwise, between Marathon's operations and the ailments that are being alleged, the company stated. End quote. So with all of that up front, let's do what we do best and take you right to the front lines of the struggle and get the story firsthand from the people who are living it. I am so grateful to be joined today by our 4 guests. Danny Lakey is a resident of Granbury, and he joins us today along with Karen Pearson and her parents, Nick and Virginia Browning, all longtime residents of Granbury. Danny, Karen, Nick, Virginia, thank you all so much for joining us today. I really wish we were connecting under better circumstances, but I'm really, really grateful to all of you for joining us and sharing your stories with us. And I wanted to start by just asking if we could go around the table and have y'all tell us a bit more about who you are and what you do and what your life was like before this Bitcoin mine came to your town.
So I'm Danny Lakey. I'm originally from Arlington, which is west or east of Fort Worth, and it's about an hour and 10 minutes from where I live now. I am the newest Granbury resident. My wife and I, 4 years ago, sold everything we had, wanted to move out to the country, get someplace where it was quiet and get away from the big city. Little did I know that it would be louder where I live now than where I came from. So in the middle of 8 million people in the DFW Metroplex, I had about a third the noise that I have in an area where I don't have anybody. I've got 30 people within, 200 acres, 300 acres. I mean, it's just, you can't imagine what it is. I will admit, because, they want to say that they're not violating any state laws. That's a lie. Texas has a nuisance law that says if somebody does anything that hinders you from using your property as you intended to use it, which in my case was a retirement place for me and my wife to enjoy life, they've taken that from us. That is a violation of state law. So when they say that they're not in violation of any laws, they're not. But that's a civil law. They are not currently in violation of any state laws. But the state laws they're inefficient in Texas. Anything under 85 decibels, and most cities limited to about 40 decibels to put it in that perspective. Airports are regulated to 65 decibels during the day, if you want to know how high the threshold is for us on the noise violations. And they've gotten very, very close, and we have readings where they've exceeded it. So, but we've not been able to prove it in court. So they can say they're not in violation of criminal law, but when they say they're not in violation of state law, they are misleading people.
Well, when we came here, that's kind of what we wanted to do. We sold our place in Santa Fe, Texas, right out of Galveston, because this was nice and quiet out here. They moved in on top of us. We didn't move in on them. And they moved that thing is right across, the Bitcoin mine is right across the street from my property. And I've had decimals 83 on my front porch, and sometime at night I've had like more than 83, and a vacuum cleaner is only 55. And who in the world is going to go to sleep with a vacuum cleaner running all night long in their house? And that's what it's like. I've been in now the hospital with all kind of problems. I never had a problem before, and they think I'm old, but I'm kind of seasoned. We're not old. And my wife has been in now the hospital. They said it was a brain tumor, but as it turned out, it was not a tumor. All the stuff was sent to the University of Michigan, and they still don't know what it is. It's not a tumor. It's not cancer. And a month or so after I had her there the first time, we had to go back again and stay another 5 days. So they are lying. They put a wall up, but that sound goes right over top of that wall. And a sound expert said if you live right beside that wall, it wouldn't bother you as bad. Well, we don't live beside that wall. So they're trying to get in good with Granbury. You know, they furnish money for the 4th of July fireworks, and they furnish money for the parades and this and that. And they give the sheriff department a big barbecue, but they're trash. They're not good neighbors at all. And Constellation, the power plant, is not either.
Out here where we are, we're in the middle of the country. We have wild animals every place, and we enjoy every one of them. Even the coyotes, we don't mind because we know where we live, but they have ran away the birds, all the animals. We don't even have snakes. So you can see how the sound is destroying the environment out here with the little animals. Besides, our health is terrible right now, but, you know, it is what it is at the moment. We can't do too much about it. We're fighting it. Everybody out here is fighting it. But, you know, big corporation, they seem to be able to just get their way, and we are left behind with, you know, in the rubble of everything. But we don't like it. We came out here. Our children lived here. We wanted to be here with our children, our grandchildren, and great-grandchildren. But we don't get that peace, you know, anymore. So it's miserable. It's absolutely miserable. And when we have to go in and out of the hospital all the time, doctors all the time, that's an invasion on us too.
There's a big water line that comes from Lake Granbury all the way to Constellation Power Plant. And that steam, they take that water and they make steam to turn those turbines. Well, when they put some of that steam up in the air, it has all kinds of chemical in it. It has lead, mercury, carbon monoxide, a mix of acid and everything. Well, some of the water that they send over the top and to go back through their fin fans and stuff, they condense that steam back to water, and they have a holding pond. That water goes in that holding pond, and then from there, when they get so much, it's dumped into Brazos River. Well, that Brazos River comes right around and comes right back to Lake Granbury again, where there's already been a content of, they did a sample and there was a lead content in there, but they don't want that to get out. So eventually, you know, if they keep on doing what they're doing now, Lake Granbury won't be a good lake at all to fish in. You won't be able to eat the fish because they'll have a lead content in it and they'll have a mercury content in it, but they don't want nobody to know any of that. You know, they kind of keep all that hush.
So just to dovetail a little bit off of what Mom and Dad have said, being out here for me and to have to watch what they go through is extremely stressful too. I know that oftentimes at night they don't sleep. Their bedroom is upstairs, and so that noise just penetrates their bedroom at night. So that makes their days rough. Cognitively, it causes issues, just the stress of everyday, day in and day out task. You know, when you're tired and you don't have sleep, and then it's so fragmented or interrupted throughout many days, it just causes a lot of stress and wear and tear on them, you know, emotionally and also in their physical health. Part of what I wanted to do in their last part of their life, Dad, they'll say they're seasoned, and they're very seasoned, and very independent as much as they can be. But over the last 2.5 years, their independence has definitely declined. And so then I come in as some of their being their caregiver for different things. It makes it very difficult to watch what they go through because this is not what they intended for the second part of their life. And I was given a great part in the first part of my life by my parents. And part of my goal was to give them the best quality of life in their second part. That's not happening out here. You know, like Mom said, a lot of the wildlife has gone away. That's something that they enjoy every day, is to feed the birds and the deer and different things out here. take off on the golf cart and go feed, but that's becoming less and less. So many other things as far as their health, dad with respiratory issues. Kind of going back to mom's, the complications of the brain issue. It is true. There's not a lot of data and not a lot of research out there. And so they fall back on that. But kind of the odd thing is that while they say we might not can prove that they're causing this harm, there's so many people in the area that are having many of the same similar things going on. And here's my question back is, while we might not can prove it, but you can't prove that it's not either. And to mom's issue, that biopsy, I saw a 1.3 centimeter creature in her brain. It was there. And they did a brain biopsy. And the University of Michigan could not, it wasn't cancer, thank God. It doesn't have the cell tissue of a tumor. It didn't have the cell tissue of a mass. And then one back in December, that was in July of this last year, December of this year, she had another episode. And the tumors, that creature, whatever it was, it's gone. So it's not there. But now the doctor is saying, but there was seizure activity in her brain. We don't have seizures in our family. And my mom has never had a seizure in her life. And then in our community, we have had a little child that started having just unexpected seizures, and they had to move out of the area. So there's just so many, they're not coincidences. There's so many things that are going on around here that is impacting our community. And we are trying to stand up and fight, again, big companies, as best we can with what we have.
Danny, Karen, Nick, Virginia, I wanted to go back around the table and ask if you could just sort of tell that story a bit more about how things have unfolded in your lives from the time that you first heard about this Bitcoin mine to now. Like, when did you start sensing that something was deeply wrong here?
Well, I think for me, and probably for most of us, we started hearing some things late 2023, November, December, and it was getting louder. It was intermittent. And we saw what was going up over at the plant. Everybody was debating on, is it batteries? Nobody really knew what it was. And then somebody finally took a picture and said it's Bitcoin, and then showed another mine from another area of the same type of machine. So then we knew what it was, and we started paying a little more direct attention to where the noise was coming from, because up until then, we just thought that the electric plant that had never had a noise problem was having these crazy fluctuations and didn't know what to think about it. It continued to get worse. When the Brownings say that they registered 82 on their property, or 80, higher than 82 on their property, the highest I've ever gotten is 82. The day it was 82, I was walking in my backyard and I just looked at the plant. I'm like, what in the heck is that? And then felt like I got punched in the chest. For the next 2 days, I had a heart arrhythmia and I was having some issues with my heart. I work in the medical field, and so I have doctors that I can call at a whim. And I called my PCP. And he said, no, because my wife was like, he needs to go to the hospital. And my PCP said, he said, no, I think this is sound related. Basically, judging from my history, I'd only had that once before. I got a steroid injection and found out that I'm allergic to steroids. And so an allergic reaction to a steroid caused that heart palpitation. But when I had my heart checked out, then my heart is in perfect condition. So this was way out of the ordinary, and it was completely from the sound. And that day I registered 82 decibels on my property, and you could actually feel the ground shake. My wife started having blackouts. She wrecked her car 6 times in 4 months, lost her job, wasn't able to work. She's still not working, which has been about 7 months now, just because of all the issues that it's caused her within her body. The strangest thing for me is, on any given day, if you just want to see something funny, just take me to any public place or whatever. Let me sit for about 10 minutes and I'll fall asleep. And it doesn't matter if I just woke up or, it doesn't matter what time of the day it is, when it is. I can fall asleep within 10 minutes because I don't ever sleep. I used to sleep through the night. Through trains, dogs, it didn't matter. Nothing was waking me up. And now I'm up 2-3 times a night. I don't sleep well at all. I mean, it really, you don't understand what kind of an impact that has on you, the constant barrage of noise. But if you look at like work rules from any OSHA, if you're exposed to a certain amount of noise levels, the louder it is, the shorter time of exposure, and the longer time of exposure, the longer you have to be away from it. Well, we exceed all of that on a daily basis, 24/7, and unfortunately, we can't get away from it. And because of what's going on, they've plummeted our property values so much, I can no longer get from my property what I put in it. And that's just ridiculous.
We noticed it in 2022 and 2023 and right on up till today. I've never in my life had any heart trouble, and I started having high blood pressure. So I went to her doctor because she has a pacemaker, and her doctor told me there wasn't a thing in the world wrong with my heart, but I take high blood pressure medicine every night that he gave me. And a lot of the doctors around here, they don't want to get involved in none of this stuff. But it's done a number on us. And not only us, all of our neighbors the same way. We got neighbors around here that people you wouldn't believe that had a heart trouble. And I've been in a hospital. I had to go to emergency room one time with my ears because it gave me an ear infection. I've been in the hospital twice for flu. They said flu and pneumonia. So, man, it's been something else. And we're not the only ones around here. There's people all around us in this area. And they even had there's a school about 3 or 4 miles over from us, and even they've had kids in school. It affects their hearings and heart and everything else. And it's really done a number on us. They say they're not doing anything, but they're lying. It is.
Like what Danny said, we heard noises, just couldn't identify exactly what it was. And at first, too, when you hear something like that and you think it might be the gas plant, that's a bit alarming, too, because, we weren't sure if something was about to blow up, take off, or what, So then as time continues to progress and, if the wind changes, it blows from the south, or the different types of nighttime, it's louder than daytime. There's so many different factors that cause the noise to ramp up more than others. And really depending on where you're sitting in reference to the facility too, and what portion of the mines that they have going at the time. But once we started realizing that it was actually coming from the mine, we were a bit surprised that they were allowed to even come into the area without us even know what was going on. None of us had been notified publicly that anything was going to take place or they were going to be expanding to a Bitcoin mine company. We had no idea. All of a sudden, it's just upon us, and then we are having to deal with what's happening. And then at that point, it was more about we started noticing people getting sick, and then we started getting sick in our own homes. And I work from home, so I'm here 24/7. And over the last year and a half, I've seen decline in my dad's hearing. Again, just all these things that, have started to come about. And then when you start hearing about your neighbor having some of the same stuff that you're having, again, it's not a coincidence. There's too many people out here just within a couple of mile radius that's all experiencing some of the same stuff. The best thing about all this, we didn't know a lot of our neighbors. I didn't know Danny. I didn't know Cheryl. I didn't know a lot of our neighbors. Man, this has brought the community together very rapidly for us to join together, because I shared this earlier with you. It's like environmental euthanasia. We're all out here in this together. And man, we hear when one of our friends had a pulmonary embolism and he was fine. When things like that start happening, or if we don't hear from somebody in a few days, we're like, okay, is everybody okay? We hear ambulance come down the road. We're texting each other, hey, is that going to your house? We never had to do that before. We're now on such hyper vigilant alerts about things. Fire trucks go by. Is there anything going on, out at the plant? Or, again, we can't live peacefully anymore. They've invaded that peace, and we all stay just hyper vigilant all the time. And like Danny said, you don't sleep. So the community out here is like a war zone, is kind of what I also equate it to. And you never know what bomb's going to go off next.
I was just going to say, when she said you don't know what bomb's going to go off next, and we know it's going to go off and it's going to hit one of our friends, even though the ones we don't know, personally. But the thing of it is, when we speak, when we're talking to you, we're talking for all of us out here. Our voice is what you hear, but we're speaking for them too. So it's not just a few of us, it's all of us. And we don't know how to get out of this. It's just, like she said, it's a war zone, and we don't have any kind of backup. And that's what we want. We want backup, and then we want it cleared out.
Another thing we have is, she and I are retired. We lived on a fixed income, and we're not the only one. There's a lot of retired people out here. They try to say that this is an industrial area. It's not an industrial area. It's home sites. That's it. There's no industrial area out here, but they moved in on top of us anyway. And when they got people coming out here to work on that plant, they shut that plant down. They're not even running with those people working inside there. And another thing, when they find out if there's a reporter or something like coming, I don't know where they get their information, but they'll shut down. They won't be running. But it's extremely loud over at Danny's house. It's louder at his house than it is at our house. I don't know if they kind of live down in the valley. And then we also have a whole bunch of Spanish people that live across the road from us. They live right next to that thing. And some of them have been getting sick, but they won't say anything, because they scared they'll get in trouble, because I don't know if they're legal or illegal, but they've been here for 30-something years. So, they're my neighbors. And when we first started feeding I feed the deer, the squirrel, the animals. Starting off, I had anywhere from 8 to 10 squirrels. Well, I had one squirrel left. Today, I don't have any squirrels, and only just a few deer, and just about everything else is gone. There's just very few animals around here. But when they find out a news reporter or somebody's coming, they'll shut down for 2 or 3 days, and some of the animals will come back. But still, no snakes, the bird population is way down. And I've been feeding them every day for the last 25 years out here. And it's just not happening. They're running everything.
Guys, like, I cannot help but hear the echoes of other sacrifice zones and other working class residents who have been poisoned, polluted, abandoned, and are dealing with, different circumstances, but very similar, situations to what you guys are dealing with. Like, it's just, it's harrowing how similar these stories sound, and it's so mind-blowing how different the causes can be. But like, I've heard from so many residents who live near, concentrated animal feeding operations, chickens, cows, and they look at that and they know that the waste that these animals are producing and being like housed in these massive lagoons, and being sprayed over their neighbors' farmlands, like they can see that that's all getting into their water. The folks here in South Baltimore, I've seen the uncovered coal cars, car after car after car for miles on these CSX trains, not covered, and the wind is just blowing this toxic coal dust all over the place. And I've seen residents wipe it off their windows, and yet all the while they're being told, "Oh, how do you know it's coal? It's not us. That could be any kind of black dust. Oh, you have respiratory problems. It's probably because you smoked a cigarette 2 decades ago," right? The burden is always put on the residents, and it's never put on the big, fat, obvious polluters at the center of these stories. And it's just maddening to hear another community going through something like this. But I think one thing I wanted to ask about is when I'm talking to folks in these other areas and the industries involved, there's always something like that they can at least grasp about those industries. Like, okay, coal, yeah, it's dirty, but we need it to for energy and metallurgical processes. The chicken CAFO down the street, yeah, it's gross and dirty, but people got to eat chickens, right? Like, I've heard these kinds of things. I just wanted to ask, like, as you and your other neighbors started realizing what was happening in your town, what did you think all of this was for? Like, what did you know anything about Bitcoin? What is it like to know that you're going through all this for something like Bitcoin mining?
I don't know. That was a pretty hard pill for me to swallow at the beginning. It's really rough because all it is it's profiting a corporation. And obviously, the people who are in Bitcoin, but the Bitcoin mining people, they're processing transactions. They're doing data calculations at phenomenal rates and encoding and uncoding and encrypting, and I mean it's crazy, but that's how they're making their money. So it is just to enrich a corporation, has no play on anything else. It was more disheartening in Texas. Obviously, Texas is we like to be the wild west, and we don't want anybody bothering with our land and let us do our thing. But that's if it doesn't encroach on other people, and this does. And then the Bitcoin mining is part of Greg Abbott's grand plan to get enough power to cover the state anytime we have peak issues. So we don't have one of the, snow issues like we had a few years back. That's part of his plan. If they bring in the Bitcoin mines that drive the power, then they build more power plants that get to sell their power on a regular basis, but then they have more power on the grid for when there's an emergency. So I understand the process, but to do that, you have opened up a state that doesn't have any regulations on this. And so now they can move in. In Texas, if you are not in an incorporated city of some kind, there are no regulations. And so they don't have any regulations. They don't have to ask for permission. It's why they say that they are in an industrial zone. They're not in an industrial zone. They're on a piece of property owned by the electric plant, and every square inch that borders that electric plant is either residential, farmland, agricultural, or used for cows or goats. I mean, it's for it is an agricultural or a residential piece of property, every inch of it. And then they want to say, oh, it's in a well-known industrial area. No, it's on the grounds of an electric plant, and you're there so you don't have to pay distribution fees to power running through somebody's power lines to get to you, and you can buy it by the gigawatt on the open market in Texas. So, I mean, it was very disheartening because you're no longer fighting the Bitcoin company. You're fighting Greg Abbott's master plan. And then we found out it was data centers now, which does AI, and that they're tying AI into our national defense. So now we're fighting the federal government, the state government, and these stupid mining companies.
Do they say it's like going to bring jobs and economic like stimulus or what? Like, I mean, what is it that they're actually like? What are they doing besides, like using a shit ton of water, pardon my French, and creating a shit ton of sound pollution, right next to your homes and generating a shit ton of money for people who are not you?
Well, and now with the more power, they're about to build a third power plant, which is going to generate more air pollution. So we have water pollution, air pollution, noise pollution. So we got the good trifecta going on. They also recently built a solar farm, and as great as good energy is, that heats the air up around it and is killing all the birds. So we've got increased temperature, increased air pollution, increased noise pollution, and increased water pollution. And what we're getting out of it is about $8 million a year to the Granbury school districts. And when we appeal to Granbury and ask them to do it because we're in the county, they have made it very clear we are not part of Granbury.
The day that we read in the newspaper that all of this out here didn't concern Granbury because we were not in the Granbury city limits, that was a slap in the face. They let us know we're out here by ourselves, and they really don't care about, Granbury doesn't care about the country around the city. They don't care about the part of Hood County that doesn't say Granbury city limits. They just don't care. And that's where we are. We're out here floundering by ourselves. It's like you're in the boat in the middle of the ocean with no oars. That's what we feel like.
Danny says it little more elegant than what we can, as far as, I guess, some of the stuff that I think that the people in Texas are not really realizing. And even, we have had so much ridicule and, people saying that we're just doing this because we want money and this and that. We're doing this because we want our peace. But we're also doing this because, for future generations. And also in Texas, like what he mentioned, the Bitcoin plants are buying kilowatts at very, very low cost per kilowatt, saving it up. And then when the grid starts weakening and there needs to be more, they then go to the Bitcoin companies and buy it back from them at the consumer's expense. Like, we're the ones that have to pay for that extra kilowatts or whatever that they're selling back. And why is it that these companies who, and again, they're not contributing to jobs in the area, they're not contributing to the local economy out here where they're located. I beg to differ that even, I bet not even 5 of their employees even live here in Granbury or Hood County. So, all at our expense, they're making money. The people in Texas are buying the electricity back at probably double or better rates, whenever the grid goes down. And that's what I don't think people understand. It's almost like the great Ponzi scheme is what it seems like, and we can't, it's people like you that get the word out for us. That's been what has helped us tremendously in this fight. Like Mom said, we're kind of out here floundering all on our own, all together, sick as some of us are, trying to just be heard and give us our peace back.
They're not allowed in China. They were run out of China. And so why did they come to Texas? It's just a scheme is all it is. And we're kind of sick and tired of it. I don't know what we can do about it. But they keep saying that they're not harming us, but they are, every one of them. I think that people in town, their palms were padded, and that's why they said we're not part of Granbury. We're out here in Hood County, out in the country, out on our own. It's a scheme. It's just a scheme. That's it.
Now, I wanted to ask you guys, with just the last few minutes that we have together. And again, this will not be the only time we cover this story. I promise y'all we are going to do follow-ups, and I want to get y'all on, panels with folks that we've spoken to from other areas of the country where they're dealing with, industrial pollution or other awful things that have upended their lives. So we promised everyone listening that we are going to stay on this story. But with the time we have left in this episode, I wanted to just ask if you guys could bring us up to speed on where things stand now and what, if anything, is being done to address, your concerns. Like, have you gotten any help from local officials? Is that help coming from, local organizations, community-led groups? What is being done and what needs to be done to help you guys get out of this hell that you're living in?
Well, we've had some help. We have a couple of county commissioners that are on our side that have helped us out. They helped get a study, but all we could get was about $6,000. So it was a very small study. We were glad to have it, but you need a bigger sound study in a bigger area than what you can do with $6,000. And we wouldn't have been able to get any more out of it. So we were glad to get that. We've gotten a lot of help from national media, some international media, and anybody that wants to come out and talk to us. We really, really, really appreciate just people putting eyes on it, because that's about the only place we're going to get some help. We're not going to get it from our county judge. Kind of holds all the cards because he gets his little party paid for by people. Senator Birdwell, who is our state senator, he's of no help. I had a 45-minute conversation trying to get the get them to not give a grant to the electric plant to expand the electric plant any larger. And I thought he was on our side. And then 45 minutes later, he voted against us. So he has not helped. Our local congresswoman, she is not of any help. We are getting some help out of Somervell County, which is our neighboring county, because they are impacted too. And everybody down in Somervell has been very, very helpful. So we want to put that out. There's a lady by the name of Cheryl Shadden, who kind of is the driver of our bus. She lives a little bit closer to the plant than I do. So she gets it even worse than I do. And she's been here quite a while. She is the leader of our ring. She keeps everybody motivated. So you got to give a shout out to Cheryl for all the work she's done. We've got some good news. We've been in enough contact with people for litigation about various different things. One, we are fighting to get an injunction to try to get the marathon to stop the noise. Bury it, put a building over it, move it out. I don't care, but just stop the noise. You can do all the Bitcoin mining you want over there. I don't care, but stop killing me with the noise. Earth Justice came on board to help us with that suit, and that is in progress right now. We're very grateful to them because they are doing that free of charge. And so they heard about us and offered us our services. We started a nonprofit called Protect Hood County. We had to do that because of litigation. They needed a leadership group. They needed a name. And so we got a 501c3 status. We are currently trying to raise $5,000 to fight building a third power plant. Like I said, the state granted them money to build it. We were able to get enough people and enough written documents to where it's the first time in the state of Texas that an air permit was not issued to a gas power plant. So they held off on issuing the permit, which made them forfeit their grant. Now they're going to reapply, and the permit has not been disputed. It's just going through a hearing process. We've got a meeting coming up with the state, and if we survive that, then we have to go in front of a judge and plead our case for a final ruling on it. And that's really where we've had quotes from $25,000 to $75,000. We finally found an attorney that says, if you get there, I'll take it for $5,000 and get you in there. But none of us are independently wealthy. I mean, we may have some land, but land in Texas is not expensive. And, these are our retirement homes. We're not sitting on millions and millions of dollars. I think the Bitcoin mine's worth about 5 or 6 billion, and the electric company's worth about 60 or 70 billion. So they've got some deep pockets, and we're having to fight them. But we did get that injunction to hold off on the air permit, which was a huge win. And we're hoping that we have a meeting with Marathon, and we're hoping we can have a little bit of a win before the end of the month. But anything anybody can do, if you just want to read about it, you can go to protecthoodcounty.com. There's a lot of information on it. Like I said, we have a 501c3 status that if anybody wants to help donate, we can't thank you enough. Again, other communities, other states, other areas are going to be fighting this because it's no longer Bitcoin. It's now data centers. And the federal government is leaking the power of AI as to how we're going to fight China in the future. And they want to stay ahead of them. And we have to have power to do it. We've got to have it all over the country. So these things are not going away. And we need some fight to get some regulation on it. Let's find a happy way to do it. It was mentioned before that China kicked them out. Their data centers, they're burying in the South Sea because it cools them. And of course, there's no noise down there. So they're burying them down in the ocean and then running the power to it, to their AI centers are coming back. I'm not saying we go that extreme, but there's got to be a compromise, and ruining all of our lives and killing us slowly is not the answer.
I think that was, powerfully put. And Karen, Nick, Virginia, I kind of wanted to just toss it to you to round us out. I think Danny really kind of underlined, the most important point here, right? When I talk to people about why we do this coverage on this show, because for years and even still, we talk to union workers, we talk to people organizing their workplaces, we talk to people in non-union shops about their lives and their jobs. It's a show by and for working class people, and so some people will ask, well, why are you talking about a Bitcoin mine in rural Texas? And I'm like, well, who do you think are the people living around this place? Like, they are our fellow workers. Like, they are the people whose lives and ability to make a living are being upended by this. Like, we haven't even talked about what this is doing to the farmers who live around there, or to anyone who's trying to kind of work the land around this Bitcoin mine and the way it's impacting them. But we've talked about how you all, as flesh and blood, people, working people, retirees, like how this is impacting you and your daily lives. So for everyone listening, just think about what it's like to try to get through your day-to-day life, make a living, like, while enduring this level of sound pollution, stress, and all the gaslighting that comes with it. That's why we're talking about it, because this is wrong. And working people standing together is the only way that we're going to get out of it. And I wanted to kind of let you guys have the last word and ask if you had any final messages to the working people who listen to this show, the folks in other sacrifice zones who listen to this show. Any final messages you wanted to send from out there in Granbury to the folks listening?
We're out here fighting for everyone, and there is a handful of us that are not giving up. We have big voices, and we have a lot of spunk in us. And like he said, Cheryl Shadden is our, she's our rock star team leader in all of this. And we're motivated to stand toe to toe with them. We might not have the money for attorneys or whatever we would like to. It's kind of funny. Those of us who, like Danny said, we own property and stuff, but they're on a fixed income. I work 40 hours a week to make ends meet myself. And even when we are needing funds, for small projects that we have to keep going with, I come to mom and dad and ask them, do you have $10? Mom will usually give me 20. I'm like, well, just give me 10. That's all I need. She's like, no, you just take this, And even on their fixed income, they still find it necessary, to give into this, because again, mom's been in the hospital several times and she still worries about her neighbors. She thinks there's somebody else that's worse off than what she is, So the sacrifices that we are all making to try to take care of each other is huge. Like Danny said, go to the website, read on there, join, get on the mailing list. You can keep up with things there. We're not attorneys, but you know what? We're fighting this as if we are. There's 5 of us that are going toe to toe up against this air permit, and to try to, if we can't block it, then we want to come in with some mediation, and we want to put up some safeguards, We're not stopping, and we're not giving up. And you can intimidate us as big as you want with your money or your corporation, but we're not going to go away. And I would say that to any community that's fighting like we are. Just, stand up for your life, because no one else is going to do it for you. And that's what we're doing. We're standing up for our lives, the quality of our lives that we wanted and laid out for ourselves, and then also for the others who can't fight for themselves. We're not quitting, and we're not going away. So one way or another, we're going to keep plugging.
All right, gang, that's going to wrap things up for us this week. Once again, I want to thank our guests from Granbury, Texas, Danny Lakey, Karen Pearson, and her parents, Nick and Virginia Browning. And I want to thank you all for listening, and I want to thank you for caring. We'll see y'all back here next week for another episode of Working People. And if you can't wait that long, then go explore all the great work we're doing at the Real News Network, where we do grassroots journalism that lifts up the voices and stories from the front lines of struggle. Sign up for the Real News newsletter so you never miss a story, and help us do more work like this by going to therealnews.com/donate and becoming a supporter today. I promise you, it really makes a difference. I'm Maximilian Alvarez. Take care of yourselves. Take care of each other. Solidarity forever.
When my face you no longer see, I live on, yes, I live on. Wherever we go, we are going to roll the Union on. It's song, I live on, yes, I live on. Wherever hungry are we. Just as hungry can be. It's song, I live on, yes, I live on. Where mean things are happening in this land, it's read a song, I live on, yes, I live on. Wherever the book mean things are happening in this land is read, I live on, yes, I live on. Wherever the videotape of me is shown, I live on, yes, I live on. If I have help to make this a better world to live in, I'll live on, yes, I'll live on. When my body is silent and in some lonesome grave, I live on, yes, I live on. When my songs and poems